Hello, and welcome to The Queer Gaze, a gay movie podcast dedicated to examining queer representation and issues.
We are dropping some special coverage out of TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, and we're going to be talking about John Early, who is a comedian. He's the writer and director of a film called Maddie's Secret. So if you want to hear more content, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thequeergaze, but make sure you're definitely giving us a follow on social media at The Queer Gaze.
Yes. So, Maddie's Secret and John Early. This is not a writer, director, performer that I have come across before.
Okay.
What can you tell me?
Okay, so I can tell you that I have experienced the comedic stylings of John Early before. So I watched a show that he was a supporting cast member in called Search Party. It was sort of a satirical take on the ennui of 20-somethings, which should sound familiar to the film that we have watched, Maddie's Secret, which kind of dovetails into the same thing. So folks, if you have not seen this movie, it concerns the title character of Maddie, who is played by John Early in a role that he references as evoking divine. So Early is a gay man. He identifies with he, him pronouns. And in the film, he plays the character of Maddie with a woman's wig, with a breastplate. The character is female. So this is not a riff on trans women or anything like that. You're meant to read Maddie as a woman. And she is an aspiring chef. She is a vegetarian. She is working at a kind of upstart content creation mill called Gourmaybe. And she ultimately ends up posting a social media video of herself preparing food. It goes viral. She gets promoted to a recipe designer for the company. And then it triggers a disordered eating complex tied to a trauma that she had as a child, which will be revealed at the end of the film. But Conrad, this is meant to be a bit of a riff on 70s and 80s Lifetime films, which is something that you and I did not know going into this. So we spent a fair amount of time after the screening talking about what the intention was. So it's meant to lampoon the sort of seriousness of those titles, where we're taking a kind of tragic woman of the week issue, and then we're rendering it entertainment. But I think our big problem with Maddie's Secret is that if you don't know that going into the film, you cannot get a read on what the film is actually trying to do.
No, you can't. And you go away with it feeling terribly uncomfortable and not laughing. Crucially, I did not laugh. No, that would be cruel. I did laugh once.
Okay.
Because I'm British and I always love it when somebody rolls out the C word. And somebody does.
Yeah.
In a very memorable line, which I will not spoil because you should enjoy it for what it is. But I did not laugh other than that.
No.
I didn't even appreciatively smile. A
polite chuckle.
No, I was just baffled throughout. Now that I know that that's what they were going for, I can recontextualize it, because at the time I was thinking, is this supposed to be like a candy-colored fever dream of a John Hughes teen comedy?
Right. It does have that kind of particular lighting. It does have that particular kind of score. But here's the thing. I shouldn't have to know that to watch the film and enjoy it. And I will say, we watched this in a press and industry screening, so we didn't have the advantage of watching it with a bunch of John Early fans who might have sought the film out. It's obviously quite a small movie, so it's not as though this one is going to be breaking comedy boundaries, making $100 million at the multiplex or anything. But our audience was quite quiet. So it's possible that we were just not the target audience and we weren't finding the funny, but I don't think that this is going to be a movie for most people.
No. So then I wonder, who is it for? Because it felt like it was for a in-group. To me, I felt excluded.
Right.
And I felt as though I was watching something that was very smug and very much enamored with itself,
Yes.
which I did not enjoy.
No. Yeah. I think comedy for me is always a bit of a dicey affair. I acknowledge, I'm probably closer in temperament to you because I grew up watching a lot of British farces.
Okay.
And so I went into this thinking, okay, it's a man in a dress and a wig. So we're going to be doing a little bit of Monty Python style humor. And yes, knowing that this is closer to, we're taking it very serious and we're putting this very ridiculous character into something that is meant to be even more ridiculous. Because, folks, the disordered eating is not shown, but we often see the aftermath. So you'll see Maddie with her face covered in vomit, and we get a lot of close-ups on really, dilated pupils with bloodshot eyes, right?
Yeah.
Because of the forcefulness of the bulimia. And it's not making fun of disordered eating. Maddie ultimately tries to hide her secret. She goes into a recovery center, but she doesn't take her health seriously because she is up for this big promotion at what is very clearly a riff on the bear. And it's really trying to toe that line between a loving homage to these films of yesteryears where we took a very serious issue and then we dramatized it to the nth degree. But I think the biggest problem is that you're just constantly distracted by the man in drag in the lead performance, which kind of feels like it's taking the piss out of the whole thing.
Yeah, it does. It makes the whole thing very uncomfortable. In particular, there was a line in it where Maddie is invited to her best friend's gay gym.
Yes.
And she says, will they let me in as an ally?
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the screening that we were in nervously chuckled at that because John Early is not terribly convincing as a woman in drag, which feels super uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because we appear to be laughing at people who want to present as women almost. Is so easy to misread if you don't understand the intent of what is going on here.
Yeah. And I think some people could make the argument that that is actually the film's most clever joke because there's so many facets to it.
Yeah.
But I think that also requires us to say, oh, well, this film is highly, like it's an intellectual exercise. This comedy is so high level. But I think there's a bunch of people who are just going to misread that and say, well, the joke is that the man is wearing a dress and ha ha, trans women.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't realize what's going on, you're going to be laughing at it for all the wrong reasons. And I hate to say it, that's probably the majority of people who will be watching it.
Yeah, yeah. And, we can have a larger, almost philosophical debate about whether that's the film's responsibility to educate its audience. But part of it was that you and I truly did not understand the intent of it until we were sent a press release on behalf of the people putting the film out that says, here's a really heartfelt explanation from John Early. And I thought, regular audiences don't get this.
Yeah.
And I think it's just too easy to misread, which, like, you and I literally had a conversation. Is this movie transphobic? Is that a possible read? And I think even if the film doesn't intend it to be, even if John Early would never intend for it to be that way, I think there's a huge portion of people who could rightfully be outraged about this. And that's not funny.
No, it's not. And to take that even further, could the film be classed as being homophobic as well? Because the best friend character you were not enamored of.
God, yes. This has been very interesting. So we've only really just seen the film, but we have seen a couple of reviews come out. And I gather that John Early has a longstanding relationship with Kate Berlant, who plays the best friend character Dina in the film. And Dina is an out and proud lesbian. She clearly has a romantic interest in Maddie, but it very much starts to move into predatory lesbian where, Maddie has a husband. She is married to Jake, played by Eric Rahill. And every time he is mentioned, Dina practically spits on the ground because she thinks that Maddie should be with her because she's her best friend. And again, it's very uncomfortable. Though I will confess, I saw a couple of reviews say that Berlant was one of the funniest and best parts of the film. And I just thought, I guess if we think that lesbians trying to force another woman to sleep with them is hilarious. Maybe I'm too sensitive, but it didn't work for me. I didn't find it funny. And especially as the film moves into the back half where Maddie is actually going into recovery and Dina sneaks in to be there with her, it does feel like now all of a sudden we're starting to make fun of disordered eating. And we have a predatory lesbian who will just not take no for an answer. Like, that does not equal laughs to me.
No. And in the center of it all, a main character who is a man in drag. Yeah, I came out of it thinking it's either so problematic it's actually phobic, or it's being that sort of edgy comedy where it's trying to push beyond that and point out just how oversensitive and woke you are and how you're likely to be triggered for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
But people will be triggered for all the right reasons. And it's a difficult film to enjoy on face value.
Yes. And we should note that this movie is 80 minutes, so it's not long. I could have told you that screening was nearly 2 hours long.
Yeah,
it felt punishingly long. And, folks, spoiler warning for the end of the film, but especially when Maddie goes into recovery, there's a couple of moments where it feels like the movie wants you to keep laughing with it, but also it wants you to take disordered eating as well as the various types of women who suffer from it very seriously, very tragically. There's a couple of moments that I think are intended to play as a kind of devastating loss. And I just could not make heads or tails of what the film wanted me to think. And I do think that that's Early's intention, but I don't think it works at all.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. We won't spoil who it is, but there is a key character that has a very tragic end, and they play it for laughs in the setup and then try to go for sincerity in the consequences. And I think you can't have that.
It's both ways, and it doesn't work.
So I think that's the thing with the film all the way through. It tries to have its cake and eat it, and then
throw it up.
Throw it up.
Which we're laughing at because the film does that. So
yeah,
this was a hard pass for me. And maybe this is just a case of comedic sensibilities not resonating with us. I'd be curious to hear from fans of John Early. I think maybe this will do the trick. But I will say, having enjoyed him in other roles, this felt like he was given too much power. And I think he bit off more than he could actually chew.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, there's a running theme in my first few days of sketch comedians going too far.
Yeah.
More of that in a Movie Oubliette episode.
Yes, do keep an eye out for those, as well as other TIFF coverage. But if you are a fan of John Early, or if you plan to check the film out, if you have other recommendations for divisive comedy that is trying to have it both ways, but maybe succeeds better, we would love to hear from you. So you can comment on the social media at The Queer Gaze, or shoot us an email at thequeergazeshow@gmail.com.
Yeah, please do. We love hearing from you.